this is what we're making today. And it's super simple. But it's like a basic barrel shape underneath, which I use for all of my gnomes. And that is the little sort of scaffold that we attach everything to. So what we'll do first is it doesn't really matter whether you make the body or the hat. So we'll make the body first. So what I've got here is I have some wool top. Now this is Swaledale. If you've never used Swaledale, there's a beautiful coarse wool. It's even coarser than Jacob. And can you see that? You see how coarse that is? And it feels like a carded wool. And it is just an absolute delight. So we are going to crack on with that. I've got some carded wool here for the hat, but you can use wool top. But I'm using carded wool because it's quicker and you can get a really neat finish on it really quickly. And then I have got some sort of fleshy type colour for the nose and for the ears. I've got this lovely grey wool that's shot through, I think, with white silk. And then I've got this bright white as well, if I wanted to add some more white, sort of shoot that through the beard. And then for the nose, I've got a barbecue stick or a cocktail stick will do. Anything that's sort of just really thin. And that's a really easy way to make the nose. If you want to download the pattern, that's on the website as well. And lots of pictures in there to help you, so lots of resources. Right, I think we're ready to go. Now my problem always is I make things too big, so I'm going to try not to make this too big. As you can see, this is quite small. So I think I've got this length, so I'm just going to split this. And as I said, we're going to make a barrel shape. What you don't want to do is roll it really loosely. So, because if you do, you're going to spend an age trying to get the shape and it's quite hard to firm up. So take your length of wool and just start to roll. And you see how I'm pushing that down really firm. So it feels really solid on the inside. There's not a lot of give, and that's exactly what you want. And as you're doing that, bring these sides in. We're not even going to use the needle yet. Just keep rolling and then just keep pulling those sides in. Now look, see how firm that is. Now I've just got to this point, so all I'm going to do is just sort of tack it really with the felting needle, just so it holds. Be careful of your fingers. I'm probably looking a bit clumsy because I'm trying to do it so that you can actually see everything that I am doing. And now that's just holding. You see how firm that is? If you've got something that looks like this and is a bit squishy, unroll it and start again. I promise you it's worth it. Right, here we go. So I'm just going to keep going, keep tucking those sides and keep pushing down, and make sure you've got a topper as well on top of your mat if you've got a topper available. It doesn't really matter so much when we're doing the 3D felting, but when we do the flat felting, it's really important to protect your mat. But I'll talk about that as well. So here we go. Right, so I'm just now quickly going to poke around. Now remember, this shape doesn't have to be perfect because it's not going to be seen. It's just going to hold everything, which is why it needs to be nice and firm. There we go. You see? So it needs to be a little bit wider. And you might end up as well with one end being narrower, which is fine because that's going to be the hat part, and then the base, which is going to be thicker, wider should I say. But when we put our beard on, we're going to put it on like a skirt, so that will actually help it to balance. It'll give it stability, and I'll show you how the bottom's really easy to flatten as well. So just keep rolling, move it down slightly if you want away from there, and then just pull in that side. You see? Tuck it in because we want this bit to be flat. I'm just going to go a little bit more, and then I'm going to stop because otherwise I'm going to make it too big. And remember, when you're doing this kind of needle felting, if you make it smaller, you can always, you see how his lip pulls away, you can always add some wool but once you've felted it, you really can't take it away. If you're attaching limbs and things, then you can move them around quite easily, but when you're doing something a bit more bulky like this, and can you see, I'm only using one needle. Try these two. I've got this, this is with an elastic band, Heath Robinson style, but you really do actually only need one needle. I think I was using my 40 there, which was a bit fine when it gets stuck in. 40 needle, so the higher the number on the needle, the finer it is. 38 for me is my favourite. 36 is also good, but I find that with the 36, once I start getting into the firm sort of felting part, or I want to do the finishing details, I find that it's just a little bit too rough, a little bit too robust, so I tend to stick with the 38. But if you're doing flat felting, then I would definitely go with a 36 or a multi-tool. But I'll talk to you about that. So here we go. So that really is only about what? I would say it's about 2.5 inches in height and about 1.5 inches in width. And then just, I've got a slightly narrow end, which really doesn't matter. So I'm going to go here, and this is going to be the base. Now you can felt it, or you can just push it down on your hands. I said to everyone last night that our hands, when we are felting, are super important. We do as much with our hands, if not more, than we do with the needle. So just push it down, and that flattens it, and that will sit nicely. But like I said, the beard is going to help that balance. So there we go. That's the body done. So the next thing we are going to do is our hat. Now, if you've got wool tops, then just pull your wool tops apart and just layer them on your mat. Now, I'm going to take this. So what I use when I'm using the multi-tool is I've got this piece of just sort of flat felt. It's pure wool again, and it's about 1.5 mm thick. And as you can see, straight through, and that will go through the wool as well. You don't need a template with this. Got a sort of triangular shape there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, see that? I'm going to draw a triangle with my felting needle. I'll use 2 because it'll be quicker. So I'm going to start here. And to be honest with you, don't worry about the size because it's all going to be scrunched down. But just go along. And can you see how I'm drawing that line? Now this will be important. Just very roughly, just drawing that triangular shape. And that is 13 centimetres by about 11. But it really doesn't matter. It can be bigger, it can be smaller, but it doesn't want to be massive. You've got it's all sort of relative to the size of the body that you're using. Right, here we are. So we've got our little triangle here. And now what you're going to do is you're just going to fold that over. If you're using wool top, then exactly the same thing. You've layered it out, pop it in layers, and then just roll that over. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just felt that down gently. We're not overdoing this yet. Don't worry. And we want to leave this long bit here. So can you see we've drawn that line? So now as we've pulled it over, our fold line, it stops. You'll feel resistance. And then go across to the other side and do exactly the same. And just leave that top bit. We want this long bit, but I'll come back to that. Pull those sides in. And then, I'm not sure if I should. I'm just going to show you a little trick. How you get that nice thick rim. So what you can actually do here is you can actually fold that up. There's a little bit too much there. So rather than just fold that over, which is fine, and I do that all the time, I'm just thinking what you could actually do is to create a bit of a thicker rim, you could just actually roll that excess in. We'll see how that works out. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be fine. And then I'm just going to pull that off. That's the beauty of using the carded wool for the hat as well. It's easier to pull off small pieces, but it really doesn't matter. You can just fold everything in and then just pull that off slightly. Just gently. And there we go. We've got our rough shape. So this is going to be what's visible on this side. This is going to be the inside of the hat. So now just continue to felt. Just going to take a little bit of that off. What I'm going to do now is you can carry on with one needle, or you can tape 2 needles or 3 needles together. But I am just going to get my punch tool because I want to show you. This is, whenever you're doing anything like this, amazing. Right, and there we go. And what it does, don't felt around this bottom edge yet. We don't want to squish this. We want to keep that nice and round. What this does is it massively speeds up the felting process. Sorry for the noise. And then you can just take that off, turn it over, and also it gives a really nice smooth finish. And again, just ignore this bit here. We'll just keep that as it is, and that becomes more exaggerated as we felt. Pull that off. Now, can you see I've got a little bit here that's quite thin. So all I'm going to do is just take a little bit of what I pulled off, and I'm just going to pop that in. It's so easy to correct any errors. There are no mistakes in needle felting, just learning. You've got to start at the beginning, like everything else in life. I think it was Thomas Edison who said, so I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of, he's on his 1000th attempt at these light bulbs, and they said, what have you learned? He said, I've learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And that is what it's all about. Every time you make something you think, oh, I'm not quite right, you'll correct it next time. You're learning. There is no such thing as a failure when it comes to needle felting. There really isn't. And I think what happens is we are too hard on ourselves. We sort of set ourselves up for failure before we've even started. So our mindset, especially if you've not got a lot of confidence, it's quite difficult because you think, I'm never going to be able to do this. And you worry about what other people think. Well, listen, if you're worried about what other people think, don't tell them you're doing it. Just do it for yourself. And we've got busy lives. You see how that's coming together? We've got busy lives. And what crafts do for easing the respite of a tricky day, regardless of whether it's work or home or family, cannot be underestimated. Aside from sort of traditional medicine, you know, the doctor's medicine, this is the best sort of medicine you can prescribe for yourself when it comes to relaxation, whether it be felting, it doesn't matter what you're doing, knitting, sewing. It's everything. And the great thing with needle felting is it's portable. You can take it anywhere. So even if the loo is the only place you can get some space, take your needle felting in the loo. We'll do it anywhere. There we go. So that's pretty much the hat done. And I'm just going to quickly go over now because it's getting quite tough. I'm just going to go over again with my 2 needles that I've got here. And just pulling those edges just to tidy it up. Now, what I want you to do is take the body and I want you to pop it in the centre at the base of the hat. So on the inside of the hat. Here we go. And then just bring that around and make sure it fits. If it's too big, take the body and add a little bit more wool around it. If it's too short and you're using carded wool, you can actually just stretch it out a little bit. So that's a really quick win for you. So here we go. I am going to wrap that around there and there. Now we're not going to felt this onto the body yet. All we're going to do is just tack gently where it's going to sit. And then we're going to pull that away from the body, so you've got that. So now we know that that's about the right diameter to sit on the body, but we can tweak it later on. And when you've done that, go on the inside with your needle and just felt it quite firmly so it holds. It's therapeutic, Dawn. Total therapy, Angela. It is. Right, so now we've got this split here. It's really easy. All we're going to do is pull that seam in, and gently, it will stick, but that's all right. Remember, this is going to be scrunched up. So we're not looking to make a perfectly shaped hat here. It doesn't matter. That is the joy of this project and why it's so great for beginners. So can you see how we're going along this seam here? And then just, you can turn it on its side if you want. I'm just trying to do it so you can see. And go along. We're going to roll this top bit, so don't worry about that if you've got a bit that's open. So just get it closed, and we won't see any of this seam. I know it's really visible now, but it's going to be squished up. So there we go. Now I'm a bit higgledy with this hat, so I'm just going to use my needle just to even that out. So just use that needle to pull that in, go back to the body, and can you see, you want to be able to sort of, so it's nice and secure. There we go. So that is just about done. Just quickly going to continue with this. And that's it, your hat. And it might be a bit wobbly, but it doesn't matter. And then with the end here, we want this really nice point. So take the end. My hands are quite dry, but might work. All right, take the end and roll it really firmly in your hands. And can you see what we've done? And then we can go a bit further down. And again, it'll look a bit odd and misshapen, but that's all right because it's all going to be squished up. So we'll go to about there. And that immediately, without any felting, mats all that wool together. And you've got that beautiful, perfect point. There we go. So that is the hat. We're not going to put that on yet though. We're not going to do that yet. We'll do the ears. So pull off 2 bits of wool, about the same size. Now these ears are quite thick. You want them to be nice and thick so that they hold their shape. And we're basically going to create a petal shape, and that is it. Now, remember how we drew a line with the hat? Going to do exactly this. I'm just going to take this off so you can see. We're going to do exactly the same with our ears. We're going to draw a little triangle. It's very rough, but we're going to leave this loose. You don't need to do the base line. So just 2 sides, like a V, an upside down V. That's a better way to describe it. And I've got not quite as much wool there. Make sure you've got about the same. Doesn't really matter too much. And again, pull in the sides as you did for the hat. And they look huge. And I may have done them too big, but I don't think they will have. I think they'll be absolutely fine because we're going to really condense this wool. I'm just going to pull a little bit off this one. I've got quite a lot going on here. So you've created this triangular shape. And make sure we want the top to be felted in, so don't leave this loose, so bring the top in as well. I'll go back to my single needle. And just keep bringing that wool in. And I like to do both at the same time because you've got them next to each other so you can sort of compare sizes. And we're leaving these loose bits for a reason. But when we attach these, we will pull some of it off, but we will need that loose bit to attach. So pull them off your mat. So I'm going to pop my topper back on again. And now you want to really firm them up. So 1 needle, 2 needles, but really go at it. I'm going to go back to my multi-tool to speed it up. All these multi-tools, by the way, they all come from China or Hong Kong, except one's got a really popular name and it's pink. Come from anywhere different, and it doesn't do anywhere different, but it is about twice the price, just saying. There we go, turn them over. So can you see how that's nicely firming up now? Continue. And we're going to carry on doing that, and what we're going to end up with is something smaller than this, but that kind of shape. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start pulling in these sides again. So use your needle to bring those sides in, but keep that shape. Just keep bringing it in. And you see how we've massively reduced that size. So it is important that we do start with a little bit more than we probably think we should need. Just shake my mat. And then I'm going to show you a way to really tidy these up and firm them up without poking yourself. So can you see how we're bringing that shape in now? How big are the ears? Okay, the finished ear on this one is about 2.5 centimetres or 1 inch. But at the moment, they're a whole lot bigger, as you can see. But I started off with a piece of wool like that for the ear. Probably about 0.5 gram or something like that. Okay, see how these are really starting to take shape now. And the reason we bring the edges in as well is, do you see this shape that we have here? That really helps to create that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use the punch tool again, just to speed it up. So you kind of that out. It's starting to get a little bit firm now. So I'll probably just go back to my 2 needles here with my laggy band. Don't worry about that shape yet. We're going to reshape them. But you really want this wool nice and firm. You don't want any wispy bits. And just keep flipping them over. And again, you can just bring those edges in now. So now we're really going to start to shape them. And you can just pull in like this as well. So you're creating that sort of petal shape. And again, we'll sort that pointy bit out in a moment. I'm just going to bring this in, single needle again. Just a bit wide, this one. So again, if you're doing them side by side, you've got a comparison. So what you can do at this point as well is you can actually, to start really creating a lovely shape, is by poking right through the side of the ear. Now if you're worried about poking your fingers, which is quite easy to do. Take a folded piece of cardboard, pop your ear inside. This is a common trick that needle felters use, and do it that way. Squeeze it hard and just gently poke around. Can you see how that's worked? Turn it around the other way. I've got a lovely fancy leather one that a friend of mine sent me from America, Zarafina, but a piece of cardboard's fine. Unfortunately, the dog found it and she loves to chew. So, but yeah, nice. But piece of cardboard does exactly the same job. And you can use this for all sorts of felting applications. So look, I've got a bit of a wonky ear there. So I'm just going to pull that in. And then I'm going to carry on shaping. I must admit, I feel like I've got more control doing it this way. It's good to firm it up, but I want to add a little curve in here. So you find that works really well. Just keep those fingers apart and you should be absolutely fine. Just don't be gung-ho with it. And you see? And then we've got a little bit of fluff here, so I'll just pull that over. And you can tidy these up. You can trim any sort of wispy bits with scissors. And that's coming together really nicely now. And then I'm really going to, where's my double needles gone? There. Going to work in that centre bit now. I'm going to pull this, hold this like so, create that sort of indentation in the middle of the ear, that cup shape. And I'm going to twizzle the point of the ear to really mat that together and create a nice shape. Now, I would probably work on these a little bit longer. And what I would say as well with these is if it's wrong and you've got a ton of wool and it's really, really thick, because you see that one's different to that one, slightly more wool, I would just start again. You're not using much wool, and sometimes it is just easier just to pop that to one side and have another go. Just going to flatten these edges because they're a little bit thick. But you can usually work out, felt out, anything you're not happy with. There we go. Now I've got a little bit much here, so I'm just going to hold on to that ear and pull off those bits. And again, and do the same here. So just pull off a little bit. You want to keep some loose because we're going to use that to attach it. But can you see now when you hold them at the bottom, I'm just going to twizzle that one, lost that point there. You've got a couple of ears which are almost exactly the same size, so that's absolutely fine. Just going to felt that little bit there. And I don't think I'll bother, I don't think there's anything there that I need to trim off really. Quite happy with that. Okay, so that's our set of ears. So I hope you're all doing okay. So I think now what we'll do is we'll go back to our body. And you see I'm just a little bit wonky there. So again, just going to pull that in a little bit. Doesn't really matter, but it just helps when you position it. There we go. So pop in your body. You just want the top third sitting inside the hat. And then just hold it. Do you know what? I think I'm just going to add a little bit more wool quickly to my, it's not quite wide enough. So I'm just going to pop on a little bit more. This one. And see how quickly and easily you can adapt. So you can, like I say, you can always add more. Easier than trying to take it away. And don't worry, this, if you're adding a little bit more wool, it doesn't need to be super firm. And it can look quite scruffy. It won't be visible. Excuse me. So I would normally tidy that a little bit more, but for time, there we go. So just pop it in top third and then take your needle and just felt through and keep going in one place. Don't move it around. What you don't want to do is create lots of needle marks. So just go through, and what you're doing now is you're pulling the wool from the hat through into the body. So everything's sort of together, and just keep working around. And don't worry about this line, because remember, it's all going to be squashed up. So keep working around. You want to make sure it's on nice and firm. And you see where that we had that little thick area when we made the hat, where we rolled it up. That's giving us that really nice rim. And then if you've got a seam there like that, just tease that wool over with your needle, and your seam's covered up straight away. Pull this bit down. So it wants to be, you can sort of move it about and that hat isn't going to come off. Now decide which is your front, because that's where we are going to pop on the nose. So I think, because that's raised up a little bit there, I think I'll sort of have my hat coming down a bit here. That's all we're going to do, because we're not going to do anything else until we've done the nose. So you get your stick, whatever it is you're using, your wool, whether it be carded wool, top's absolutely fine for this. I like quite a big nose on my gnome. Wrap it around the stick. You can twizzle that end just to mat it if you find that easier. Hold it there with your fingers. Keep your thumb and your finger there, because you don't want a really long nose, and just wrap it round. Keep your fingers close to the stick, and then you can pull it really tight. It needs to be firm. And if you're using carded wool, don't pull your fingers too far away, because it will come apart. And that is it. You're just wrapping this barrel around your cocktail stick. Now look, here, keep this loose. You'll understand why. You want to keep that loose and just shape it. So that's kind of, we've sort of all in, that's what you're going to end up using. So just diagonally down there, and these loose bits will all be hidden, because they are what we are going to use to attach it under the hat. I felt them in a little bit, but just, you know, nice and wispy. You want that loose wool. And that's it. Pull it off the stick. Looks a bit odd at the moment. Just poke through if you want to just fill that gap in the centre. Okay, we found the centre of our hat. We're going to lay this right underneath the rim, right up to the rim. Hold with your finger, and these loose bits, we're not going to felt it on from the front, we're going to do it from the side. You see, we're going to felt in those loose bits, and we are continuing to shape that nose as we do so. There we go. So it'll be something like that at the moment, and then we'll turn it over, go to the other side, and make sure it's pushed up to the rim. You don't want to see a gap between the rim and the nose, so you don't want to see any body in between the nose and where the hat sits on the nose. And then come back here again. Bit of a funny shape this side, so I'm just going to really poke around at that. And again, use your fingers if you've got any weird shapes going on. You can squish it into shape and just go underneath. Again, avoid the front area, just always working around the sides and under the edges. There we go. That's definitely a big hooter on mine. I'm just going in diagonally and I'm just pushing that wool up under the hat there. And don't worry about any of this here, not going to be visible. So there we go. We have our nose on, we have our hat. Just got a little bit of loose wool here, so I'm just going to tidy that up a bit. Now we're going to scrunch the hat next. We do that before we do the ears. We kind of put the ears on and then scrunch it again. Because if you put the ears on now, they'll probably end up looking not quite central. And again, just go round, make sure that hat is nicely firmly on. And see, we've got that nice rim there. Okay. So all we do now is we just push it down with our fingers. Leave that top bit for now. And you might have to do it a few times. Just pull it down with your fingers and hold it with one hand. And we're going to use these lines as our guide. What you think. Now really be careful when you do this. Go through these lines and it'll be all over the place to start with. And you see how that's starting to pull it down. So go through the lines again. Hold it firmly down and poke through as well. And if we use the lines as our guide, this is what we'll end up with. And also then you won't see the needle marks because it'll kind of be tucked in. I hope you're all getting on okay with this. So can you see how that's beginning to hold? I'm just going to go in the back here. And this is the bit, it takes a while. It's not difficult, but it does take a while. You see I've scrunched that down now. So what I'm going to do now is, again, I'm going to kind of go through at different angles using those lines. Please watch your fingers. This is where you will poke yourself. Can you see how that's holding? And then let's just come back here. We might, I think I'm just going to pull that over because it's not quite positioned right. So you will reposition as you go. You will start off just by scrunching it up and starting to get it to sort of and shrink. There we go. And then we'll start to work on this bit here. And this bit, you're going to now be careful. You're just going to push through. Keep that needle going through the same spot. And that way you won't end up with lots of different needle marks. So now it's looking a bit odd, but can you see how we've scrunched that down? But what we'll actually do is we'll be able to pull it back up and into any shape we wish. And I'm just going to tuck that hat in there a little bit. Okay, there we go. So you see what I mean about not putting the ears on? We wanted to sort of hat in position. So we'll come back to the hat. We'll do some more scrunchy with it in a little while, but we're going to add the ears. Now the ears look like they're coming through the hat, but they're not. So what we do is we lay our ear, find a little gap either side of the nose. So I've created these two little gaps here. And the loose bit here, just lay it on and start to felt that into the hat. And watch what happens as you do that. Your ears will start to sit upright. You see? And then my ears are really big, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to really work through the back of that. Don't worry, they're facing the wrong way, that's fine. And what that will do is that will draw the ear further and further inside the hat, and it will actually start to shorten them. And then we can work from this side as well. Mine's definitely got big ears. Do you remember big ears? I don't remember big ears. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I've got big ears, but actually I'm okay with that. Pull it down a little bit more. So that's the first ear on. Not going to worry about positioning it. I'm going to go to the other ear. There we go. So that's something like, again, I might work a little bit more on those, but for now I won't. And then actually quite happy with my hat, but if you want to work on yours a little bit more, then you do so. I'm just going to turn those around. I'm just going to poke that in a bit more. That's it. So you see how we've really reduced the size of those ears just by working it. I like my ears. I think they're good. Right, so for the beard, it's super easy. We've got this lovely skirt. So what I'm using is, I always use wool tops for the beards, unless I'm using like smart yarn. I've got this lovely grey wool, but you can easily blend too. So if you've just got grey, you can put some white with it, whatever colour you're using. So pull some wool away, and you only want short pieces because it's a short gnome. Just keep your hands apart and then just pull this wool apart. And then fold it over like what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it around the gnome like this. Now spread it out. It doesn't want to be too thick. You don't want to see through it either. Fold it. Now you can go straight to your gnome and felt underneath, but sometimes you can actually lose some of the wool because it sort of detaches. So along that fold line, if you just go with your needle, that will just hold it, stop you losing any of it as you're doing it, because this bit's going to be hidden. And then just pull that off gently. And then we're going to start here, right under the nose. Find the best side. I'm just going to take that off. You don't want too big a piece to start with, because what we're going to do is going to work all the way around and it doesn't quite look right. If you do it in one full piece, you kind of distort it, and I like to do it in little sections. So where you've got that fold line, pop it right underneath the nose, and then up the side, right under. And what we're doing is we're kind of this wool under the rim of the hat. What you don't want to do is have it going over the hat. You want to tuck it under that rim with your needle as you felt. You see what we've got here? And then just going to pop that up there. And don't overstretch it. Get some more wool, because you'll lose the shape. You see that? And we can come back and add more if we want to. And then I'm just going to work around the back here. Like I said, I normally do this in maybe 3-4 sections, but just for speed today, I'm not. But it's just, you end up with a nice, tidier finish if you do it that way. Just poke that underneath the hat. That's it, using the wrong needle again. And I'm still using the 38, which is the one I've been using for the entire project. Bring this up and over. Again, don't stretch it out. And if you push underneath the hat, it is lovely wool, Linda. This is, I'm not even sure what wool it is. It's a fine wool. I think it's, not sure if it's a British wool with some white silk, or it might be merino. And I'm always careful when I get my merino. It's ethically sourced. It's nonetheless cheap. I don't get them. It comes from South Africa and South America, I think, where they don't practice that. But I don't use a great deal of merino, to be honest, because I like the coarser. Nice for finishing touches and top coats, and beautiful for pictures. There we go. So I've still got a little gap there. So I'm just going to pull a little bit more off here. Just gently pull that away. Fold it in half, and like you say, you can felt it just so that it holds, so it doesn't get a little bit unruly. Pop that under there. Under how we're doing. And then what you can do as well is, if you use your needle just to draw it down, and it just neatens it and makes it all look even. And you will lose a few bits. That's my beard on. Now, with this one, I've trimmed it. But if you want, you know, you cut nice and long. There's no need to trim it. And then I've got this really nice bright white here. So what you can also do is, if you just really want to lift the colour a little bit, you can just add some thinner pieces in, just as extra contrast. Or if you've got silk or any other different colours you want to use, and again, just use your needle. You see how that just really pulls that down nice, gives it a really nice look. I'm just going to trim mine. You just go around with your scissors, just use the base guide. Or not. And then what you can do as well, if you want to snip into it just so those ends are not as blunt, as if you're playing at hairdressers. And that, what that does, it just gives a nice sort of point to all that wool. And if you wanted to, you know, you can and go, I mean, it looks brutal, but you can really chop into it, and you can actually, my finger's stuck, you can actually create some nice layers as well, and come up even further if you wanted to. I do this with the fairy dresses. And you see how you've got all that texture in there now. So mine's a bit uneven, but I'm sort of going for speed more than quality at the moment. Can you see how cutting into it though now has added a whole lot more texture? And that's it. That's your gnome, you're done.